Rare Connection, the podcast that connects rare disease patients, caregivers, and advocates while educating the public and medical professionals through the power of storytelling. I'm your host, Joanna, creator of the podcast, Rare Chef YouTube channel, where we explore the intersection of rare diseases, nutrition, and lived experience. Today, I got the wrong, shoot. That's not it. Hang on. I wish this didn't happen now. Please. Didn't think that looked right. So now back to this one.
As a result, one copy is malfunctioning, you get a lot less glucose from the bloodstream to the brain, which means that your brain is effectively in a constant starvation mode, which is why all the brain functions are either not happening or happening a lot slower than they should. Which makes this condition a very complex one, because obviously when the whole brain is starved, we are talking about movement. Like, she has cerebral palsy as a result of this condition. She has seizures because her brain is more prone to getting in a short circuit, basically. She has language delay. She has a very distinct processing delay condition. And the other things that you can have, apart from the main ones, that whatever symptoms come out, they are drug resistant. Another very, very complex movement disorder that can happen on top of cerebral palsy is called ataxia. And ataxia is basically lack of balance. Imagine not being able to keep your balance ever. And so, and then obviously intellectual disabilities can happen. Now, there's two kickers here. Kicker number one, there's a very wild variety of how the GLUT1 deficiency is shows itself. So there will be people with GLUT1 that you can barely tell there's something is not right, and they have more physical disabilities than intellectual. There's people that are vice versa. Their movement is potentially, fine. Maybe they're a little bit slow. Maybe they have a little bit less. They're a little bit less sure-footed. They don't really have a lot of seizures, but they have significant mental disabilities. Or it could be that they're physically okay, mentally and cognitively okay, but they have dozens and dozens of seizures per day. So you don't know what's going to happen. And although it's not a degenerative condition, so whatever you can get your brain to learn, it stays. Things can change. There's a lot of factors that your body could change the way it transforms energy, blood energy into brain energy. Hormones play a huge part. For example, the 100% of GLUT1 patients, when they hit puberty, everything that was historically working for them, whether it was the ketogenic diet or some drugs, they stop working. Because obviously hormone levels affect metabolism as well. So it's not it's a very complex complex life. And then the other kicker is that a lot of GLUT1 patients have comorbidities, whether it's ADHD, ADD, like full-on epilepsy. It can happen like in some of the hardest cases. You can get microcephaly, which is actually life-threatening as well. I mean, seizures are also life-threatening, but so it's quite hard.
So yeah, that's rare diseases. They pretty much all have comorbidities. And so that's why you see some rare disease patients with 30 different conditions.
Yes.
And that's the max I've seen. How long did it take you to get a diagnosis?
A year and a half.
So, what were some of the early signs that something was off?
I would say movement disorders were the first ones that we noticed, because obviously with a baby you don't really see cognitive delays. A year-old, 1-year-old is a 1-year-old. And then the second, like after the seizure, so the eye movements turn out to be dystonia, and ataxia, so the lack of equilibrium, the lack of balance, were the other ones that sort of manifested themselves.
Mm-hmm. Now, what kind of specialist did you see before landing a GLUT1 diagnosis?
The first specialist would have been the neurologist.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, was she misdiagnosed as something else beforehand?
No, the neurologist was just labeled her as a global developmental delay and called it a day.
So they didn't look any further.
No.
How does care for GLUT1 in New Zealand compare to what you've seen what you've seen or heard internationally? So, for instance, you were in Italy before?
Yes. I've actually, the good thing about being connected is that you can sort of like, hear story all across the world. And I think New Zealand, despite everything, we're actually not doing too bad. We do receive some sort of disability allowance that helps us, because obviously, it being very, very high, like she's in the severe health needs category, obviously. And one of us had to stay home to look after her, especially because, with a child like this, you can't just like put them in a daycare or in a kindergarten and be done with it. Like they need one-on-one care. So we do receive some sort of a little bit of compensation for that. It doesn't quite make up a full-time job, but it's a sacrifice that we had to make. Obviously, it was the best thing for Georgia, so that's what we did. And in terms of, so in New Zealand, there's two streams. One is the healthcare subsidy, and one is the education subsidy. The education subsidy is scaringly appalling, but on the health side is actually okay. We got assigned a full metabolic team. There's always one person on call for us, so we have like a crisis or anything like that, we always have someone that we can actually pick up the phone and ring. Georgia now has an assigned, she has a team of physiotherapists. She has an assigned physiotherapist, she has a speech language therapist, and she has a social worker. And on the education side, she gets a few hours a week of teacher aid.
Mm-hmm. So the ketogenic diet is a cornerstone of treatment for GLUT1. How did you hear?
Yeah.
How did you learn about how did you learn to navigate it as a parent?
That was really hard. So when you get the diagnosis, the first thing that they tell you is, as you said, the standard of care treatment is a ketogenic diet, which means that there's no drugs that can help you. And but it also means that if your kid or if your patient does not take on the ketogenic diet well, there's no alternative. The ketogenic diet, there's a lot of information out there. Some is accurate, some is not, but a medical ketogenic diet is typically low carbohydrate. It's actually moderate protein. It's not high, it's not low, and it's high fat. And it causes the body to produce something called ketones, which is an alternative fuel for your body. Basically, if you when you put your body into a ketosis state, you stop using glucose as your form of energy and brain energy, and you replace it with ketones. It doesn't cure the disorder. It manages some of the treatments, and because it's a complex neurometabolic condition, obviously, and it's it depends on a person's metabolism, which changes over time. The standard of care is actually it's only moderately successful.
So does she follow? Does she take any? Did she use medical foods?
No. I mean, no, that's a lie. Yes. So there is a formula. There is a ketogenic formula that we actually received from the hospital, so we don't have to pay for that. It's a KetoCal. I don't think there's anyone around the world that gets something that is not KetoCal. KetoCal is the one product that's usually you can get through your medical channels. And then we just had to, in our case, so we've been onboarded by the metabolic team. They gave us this spreadsheet full of calculation that was actually created by Stanford University. Again, we have to thank an American university for that, the research group. And basically the way you manage a classic ketogenic diet, it works in ratios. So thinking about low carb, moderate protein, high fat is actually not the right way of doing it. You have to think, so for example, Georgia is on a 2-to-1 ratio. There will be kids or adults that are on a 3-to-1 ratio, 4-to-1 ratio. And what it means is that it doesn't matter what you eat, as long as for every 4 grams of fat, you have 1 gram of combined protein and carbohydrates. So for Georgia, she's on a 2-to-1 ratio. For every 2 grams of fat, she can only eat 1 gram of combined protein and carb. And then you have to take into account, we have to calculate things like, okay, so Georgia is a 4-year-old. She's roughly 18 kilos. So she needs at the very minimum 18 to 20 grams of protein throughout the day, right? And so because that, you add it to your calculations and it spits out, okay, if I am making a lunch that is 200 kilocalories, this is how much fat you need, and this is how much protein you need, and this is how many carbs you need, right? And then every time that you make a meal, you have to write the food composition breakdown. So if I am making Georgia ham, cheese, and avocado, I have to write in the spreadsheet, line item number 1 will be avocado, which will have this amount of fat, this amount of protein, this amount of carbs. I will add a line item for ham and 1 for cheese, and I put the quantities of each food that I want to use, and it will tell me the totals for the whole meal, how many total carbs and total protein and total fat, which is also, especially with small kids, is very challenging because, for example, what happened to Georgia in the early days, we were paying at the very beginning while we were waiting for my husband to resign to be a stay-at-home dad. We had to hire temporarily a nanny to help us out, just a few hours a day. And we explained to her, but it's a very hard concept, right? And at the end of the day, you're a nanny, you get paid to look after the child. You don't necessarily take on everything on board. We gave Georgia a snack of avocado, blueberries, and cheese. She didn't eat any of the blueberries and she didn't eat any of the cheese. So she just loaded up with avocado, and her body went into shock because all of a sudden you just ate a food that's very high in fat and does not have a significant carb and protein component. So she went into a state of ketoacidosis, which, if you have diabetes, you will be very familiar with it, because it's when the ketones in your body spike too high and your body becomes acidic. So first of all, if it gets too out of control, you are poisoning your blood, and then you can lose consciousness, and you can have it can result in grand mal seizures, which is what happened to Georgia.
So it sounds very similar to what diabetes is.
Yep. I mean, yes, absolutely. With diabetes, the good news is that as long as you manage your glycemic intake and you stick to low GI with slow release glycogen foods, happy days. Whereas with the diet, it has to be at ratio at all times, no matter what you eat.
So are there certain things on the ketogenic diet that normally a diabetic would be able to have, but a person with GLUT1 wouldn't be able to have?
Correct. Yeah, because for example, as a diabetic, you can still have your pasta as long as it's, for example, you want to swap wholemeal pasta instead of normal one. Whereas for a GLUT1 patient or like, any sort of patient that has to follow a ketogenic diet, even wholemeal pasta or quinoa or, all those like ancient grains, it's still carbs. So a ketogenic patient will not be able to eat them, which also makes for an interesting added complication because obviously when you're carb poor, you struggle to get enough fiber intake, right? Because fiber is found in vegetable and grains, which are carb based. So that's another fun thing that we have to watch out for.
Certain ones are, but not all of them. A lot of the root vegetables are.
Oh yeah, but like for example, let's say, especially for kids, let's say that I'm making a lunch for Georgia, right? And the lunch is 200 calories. That means that I cannot give her more than say 4.5 grams of carbs for the total meal. I can't give her banana. I can't give her potato. I can't give her kumara. That's too many carbs. Maybe I could give her banana, but it will be like a little sliver. Whether if I choose low carb alternatives, I can give her more vegetables, and I have to worry about the vitamins. I have to worry about the minerals. There's a number of things. Thankfully, there's a lot of vegetables that are low carb, and there's a number of fruit that's low enough so I can actually give her a significant amount. So it's not too bad, but it's definitely something that we have to worry about.
So what's the program that helps you with all this?
Say that again, sorry?
What's the program that helps you with all this? You said you have a certain program that you program everything in?
Yeah. It's a spreadsheet. Yeah. So we every day we prepare meals using the spreadsheet. Just to check that, everything is at ratio. And there's not a lot of food that we can buy that we can just buy off the shelves in the supermarket and give it to her. There's even the keto products, it's sometimes something will be marketed as keto or keto friendly, and it's actually not good for Georgia because it doesn't have the right ratios. And that's because there is a version of the ketogenic diet, as you would know, that's called modified Atkins diet. And the modified Atkins diet is a lot more user-friendly than the medical ketogenic diet because you don't have to worry about ratios anymore. With the modified Atkins or MAD, you just have to make sure that you get like a lot of your diet is high fat, which is relatively easy. You just eat some nuts, you just eat your avocado, you have your oils, you have your butter, you have your mayonnaise or whatever, and the only thing that you have to track is the amount of carbs. So you can have within a very, very big range, you can have as many protein as you want. You can't go over like a couple of 100 grams of protein a day, but who does that unless you're a professional bodybuilder? But as long as you keep your carbs low, then you're cool, you're good. And so you have a lot of products on the market that say that they're keto, but they're actually also high protein. So if you actually look at the ratio, it doesn't work for people like Georgia. But it is what it is.
Yeah, that can get pretty confusing.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of parents struggle. Like we were lucky because, my husband is, he's actually, he's a physicist, and he's got his master's degree, and he didn't necessarily know about nutrition and metabolism, but he's got that scientific mind, and calculations are easy to him. And I actually did physics at university as well, but I'm a trained chef. When I was in Italy, I had two jobs, and one of them was a chef at a wine cellar. So I was very familiar with food, with nutrition, and thinking in terms of macronutrients and adding things together was actually quite natural to me. But I have seen, you don't have to know this stuff. You don't have to know the carbohydrates content of sweet potatoes or carrots. Like, who does that? It's not really, it's not something that people are supposed to know in their everyday lives, right? And
Yeah.
when you're hit with a diagnosis like this, like any rare genetic disorder, that you have to somehow wrap your head around, and maybe there's not enough research, and you don't know what the future is going to look like for yourself or for your child, which is quite, it's quite distressing. And also having to learn this whole new, like, you have to become a metabolic, like, maybe not a metabolic specialist, but you have to become very well versed in nutrition. Like, you have to know your macronutrients, you have to know your micronutrients, you have to learn a new way of baking. Like, I've had to learn how to bake without flour, which is actually quite challenging, because without the gluten, all the consistencies are all skewed and everything sucks for a while. But I was lucky because Georgia was only 2 years old, so she didn't care. And that's the other thing, like, Georgia, she was 2 when she started the ketogenic diet, and we were being careful with food even before. So she never had sugar in her entire life. She never had fries. She never had chicken nuggets. She never had pizza. And for her transitioning to this new diet, it was just adjusting what she was already experiencing. Like, imagine, like, you get diagnosed, your kid get diagnosed, and they're 9. And maybe, as we discussed, they're also autistic. So all they eat is chicken nuggets and white pasta. And you have to tell them that the two safe foods that they're eating, they can no longer touch them. And they have to learn this whole new way of eating that has absolutely no chips, no bread, no pasta, no pizza. Even chicken nuggets become challenging because obviously the beta has carbs in it. I've had to learn how to make my own chicken nuggets for Georgia, which is, it's fun, but also it takes a lot of time. And that's the other aspect that people don't normally talk about. Like, we're pretty good now. We've been doing it for 2 years. Making a meal for Georgia takes is exactly the same time as making a meal for me or for my husband or whatever. But when we started, we would spend upwards of 3-4 hours every day just to figure out what to do and how to put it together. And then, Georgia maybe didn't want it. We're very lucky because Georgia, she will have said no to food maybe 3 times in her life, but not every kid is like that. Most kids are picky, and it gets a lot. It really gets a lot.
What are some of the challenges and misconceptions families often face when starting the keto diet?
Well, one is that the biggest misconception is what people think a ketogenic diet is, and so they think that, give your kid a steak and some hollandaise sauce and some cheese and they'll be all right. Whereas we've all learned that no, absolutely not. Georgia cannot, in fact, eat a steak because that's too much protein, and she's only, it's not at ratio. Or, like, hey, I found these like biscuits that are gluten free, and there's a lot of confusion. Some people cannot understand the difference between something being gluten free and something between low carb. It's just the biggest thing is just because in your everyday life you don't need to know all this. You can live a very happy life eating the foods that you like, just with the knowledge that as long as you put some vegetables and some fruit in there, you're going to be fine. And all of a sudden for us, that's absolutely not enough knowledge. and how to deal with it. And then like the birthday parties and birthday cake, and she wants to get in on and she wants to do what her friends do, and now she's 4.5, and so she's going to like her little friends' birthday parties, and it's always a challenge because the moms are like, oh, I made this brownie and it's gluten-free. I'm like, yeah, good for you, but Georgia still can't have it. But we go prepared. Like I usually, like every time that there's like a little event or a birthday party or anything that involves food where Georgia is invited, I get in touch with the organizers. Like, look, I'm just going to make it easy for both of us. If you tell me what's on the menu, if you tell me what you're preparing, I can put a couple of keto versions so it looks the same and Georgia's happy, and we don't have to deal with the ambulance and medical emergencies, and we just come with our own food.
Yeah, that's what most of us have to do.
Yeah.
I mean,
And we're pretty
also it's
sorry.
in
Yeah,
school
we're
situations.
pretty lucky because, like, for example, even when we go out to restaurants, right? Not that we go out a lot, but the very few times we go out, my birthday, my husband's birthday, or like Easter or whatever, I usually call the restaurant in advance, like, hey, my daughter is on a diet, blah blah blah. And I don't know, maybe because she's a kid, I've never had the owners or managers going, no, you can't come to our if you can't come and dine with us if she's not gonna eat our food. They don't care. They just want you to be happy.
Yeah, you're lucky there.
I think so. Yeah, I think that's very specifically New Zealand.
Yeah, I hear it all the time in the U.S. It's especially if you have to cook some sort of medical food because they see it as an allergy. So
Yeah, pretty much.
So you help on board new families at Starship Hospital. What are the key things you tell parents just beginning this journey?
So I basically created like a resource, like it's like a booklet that the metabolic team can give to the new parents, basically.
Mm.
And one thing that I've noticed with I'm bringing it up. I can send you a copy.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing, like the metabolic team is actually, it's really good at giving them the down low of, okay, this is a metabolic, this is a medical ketogenic diet. This is what a ratio is, and blah 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 blah. But I still found like very challenging because obviously they want you to be in hospital when you start a medical ketogenic diet, because your body will will have to kickstart a whole new energy system, right? And so they want to monitor you, especially when you're a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And the one distinct memory that I had is that all of a sudden, the metabolic team was like really good. The metabolic consultant showed up with groceries, with lots of food that she knew that they were keto friendly, and left me obviously figure out how to combine them all together for Georgia, right? So and I was like, can you imagine, like in a hospital ward, you're like there trying to chop some, like spread some Philadelphia and chop this sausage and, like these cherry tomatoes. And you're like there with like a tiny little thing. You don't have a knife. Obviously, that's a hospital. It's not, there isn't like a proper kitchen. It's like maybe there's a kitchenette if you're lucky that you can use. So I'm the first, the where do I start? It's a checklist. If you're going to the hospital, bring all of these items with you because you will need it. And it says like a couple of chopping boards, a couple of knives, a precision scale, small containers, and a laptop or a tablet, because you're gonna need it for the damn spreadsheet, because you will not be able to do calculations. We're not beautiful minds, so we need some help with the making everything work. And then because we're in New Zealand, also the child disability allowance form. ask for it straight away, kickstart that process. So at least, the medical, being on a keto diet is extremely expensive. The foods that you will need are extremely expensive, and they're not funded. You have to pay for it. So, get the disability allowance right off the bat, so at least you get some money back. It's not nearly enough what you need to pay for groceries for a keto diet, but hey, everything helps.
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest thing for us was the precision scale, because obviously kitchen scale, it's got like a plus minus a couple of grams variance. But when you're dealing with foods where something, if you weigh something and it's 2 grams off, all of a sudden it's a different amount of fat or a different amount of protein, and it throws the ratio off. You have to be really careful. And what I've noticed is that coffee scales are the best scales that you can buy, because they've got a precision of 0.1. And that's definitely precise enough for the ketogenic diet. So I've put all the resources together. And then the other thing is, first week, what does it look like? Is your kid, is the kid young enough that they're still weaning? Do they have favorite foods? And just go through, like, write down the list of everything that your child likes to eat, and check what you can keep. Because, for example, for us, Georgia really loved cheese and avocado even before the ketogenic diet. So it was like the very first thing that we put into her meals, because she was already familiar with the flavor and with the texture and liking it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm basically like, it's a sheet that goes through, keep what you can, substitute what you can, because there might be a keto alternative. You don't know.
Mm-hmm.
For example, pasta. Georgia actually loved pasta. It's, I'm Italian, so one of the first foods that I've given my child was pasta. And while you cannot buy keto pasta, because the concept doesn't exist, but you can buy protein pasta. And if you buy protein pasta, there's some types of pasta that have some protein, but it's not insane, and they've got absolutely next to zero carbs. So you actually can use the pasta as your protein source, and then just add some fat and some tomato sauce to it. So pick a top 3 foods that your child will ask for, and find alternatives. Like, there's very good keto granola out there if your child, has cereal for breakfast. And then I give them a breakdown. I call it like the first week breakdown. So I've given them group of foods that are high in fats. So when they go to the supermarket, they don't get overwhelmed. I've got avocado, olives, cheese, bacon, mayonnaise, fresh cream, sour cream, mascarpone, lard, coconut yogurt. And if your child is old enough
Mm-hmm.
that it's not a health and safety concern, nuts.
Mm-hmm.
And then, group number 2, protein. There's some protein, like, when Georgia was 2, I couldn't give her chicken. It's too high in protein. I was going to be able to give her like 10 grams.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to adapt. Chicken was not, maybe was not good, but for example, lamb was great. Or, fatty minced beef. It was funny. Everyone wants the lean ground beef, and I was there at the supermarket looking for the fatty one. Or, there's actually some people don't know, but there's actually a number of vegetables that are higher in protein than carbs. For example, broccoli and spinach and mushrooms and cabbage. Those are great for a ketogenic diet. And then I give them the down low of the carbohydrates, because some carbohydrates are safe to consume, and some vegetables are actually you need to not eliminate but limit. For example, beans and lentils and green peas, potatoes, carrots, butternut squash, kumara, which I don't know if you guys have it there. It's basically the Pacific equivalent of sweet potato.
Oh, okay.
But it's native. But basically that's what it is. It's a little bit lower in carbs, thankfully. Pumpkin and corn, like you can give it to them, but it's going to be very small quantities. And then I do the same with fruit. So I've given them, the top 10 keto-friendly fruits. There's lemon, raspberries, strawberries, blackberries, watermelon, rock melon, dragon fruit, which thankfully we have a very, very good Asian community here in New Zealand. So dragon fruit is you can easily find it at the supermarket. And dragon fruit is a fiber powerhouse. So if you can find it, it's extremely useful during a ketogenic diet. Nashi pear. We have a fruit called feijoa here. I don't know if you guys have it in the US. I don't think it's native from here. It sounds like South American, but it's very popular here, and it's low carb and it's amazing. Mandarin is really good. Nectarine is really good, and other things you can still give it to them, but you have to be really careful, like mango or gold kiwi fruit or pineapple or apples or blueberries, or like even and then you can drill down. For example, there's like how many varieties of apples are out there. Some of them are actually lower carb and some of them are quite high. So that's a fun rabbit hole that you can go down to. Don't do it in the first week, just start easy.
Yeah.
And then I put together like a sheet called allies, and I've given them some pointers, like extended family. Get someone from your extended family or a close friend to learn how to make keto meals with you. So if something happens to you, there's someone on the bench that can actually sub in straight away, no questions asked. They're already on board. They already know everything. Online shopping. Identify your top 3 online shops where you can buy keto or keto-friendly foods straight away. And I've given them some options for the New Zealand market. Food and health printouts. I laminated copies of recipes that you can make on the go, or like, for example, for Georgia's ratio, Philadelphia is really good on its own. So I've made, these are foods that you can walk in the supermarket, buy and give to Georgia without handling them. Amazing. Print out, give it to, I gave it to kindergarten, I gave it to the grandparents, I gave it to Georgia's friends' parents if she goes there for a few hours. Like we always put a lot of food in Georgia's bag wherever she goes, but you never know. Or like, I've got this like reduce and reuse, where I tell people that experimenting is great and encourage. Find your top 10 recipes and put them in a book and keep rotating them, because that's going to be your staple food. And then the recipe idea banks, there's so many online resources. If you actually go online and type in ketogenic diet, there's so many websites that you can go. Only some of them will be good for you. It took me months to find a couple of online options that they had recipes that I could actually use for Georgia. Find them and hold them very dear. And then another very important thing that a lot of people don't think about is the water consumption. And obviously, kids struggle to drink water, and that's a universal fact of life. But when a child is on a ketogenic diet, you're actually your body is not designed to stay on a ketogenic diet long term. Your body can do it, but it doesn't mean it wants to do it. So you have to treat it very carefully, because the ketogenic diet is heavy on your blood, and it's heavy on your kidneys, and it's heavy on your your flora and your bacteria in your intestines. So the best thing that you can do is keep making sure that your child keeps hydrated and keeps all the especially the waste functions of your digestive system, they go on without a hitch, because otherwise it's a lot of trouble down the line.
So do you have a favorite keto recipe that's both approved for a parent, approved and parent practical?
Yep. So there's a something called keto yogurt that I make for Georgia. It's only got 3 ingredients. It takes just a few moments to make, and I can guarantee you that it's impossible for kids to like it. And the one that I make is at 2-to-1 ratio, but because of the type of ingredients, it's very easy to just go up with the fat, because what you do, you take fresh cream. I think you guys call it heavy cream in America. You've got this unsweetened yogurt that's very lean. It's got no carbs. It's got no fat. It's only got protein. And then you've got a little bit of fruit. So it's very clean, right? you have the fresh cream or heavy cream, which is your fat component. You have your yogurt, which is your protein component, and you have fruit, which is your carb component. And you mix them together. You can either like freeze it for half an hour so the cream sort of like hardens up, or you can mix the cream, so you can whip it so it becomes hard, right? And then you can mix it with your fruit, and then you can mix it with your yogurt. I've been giving this almost every day to Georgia for 2 years, and the beauty of it is that, you know, the cream is always the same and the yogurt is always the same. But then I found, you know, there's this sugar-free jam spread that you can buy that are like stevia or allulose based. You can put that in every once in a while, or you can put raspberries, strawberries, feijoa, or mango. If you go on, so I've got a little website with a blog with recipes, and what I try to do on the recipe is give already the fixed ingredients. It's 45 grams of cream and 55 grams of yogurt. And then, if you want raspberries, it's 58 grams. If you want strawberries, it's 35. If you want mango, it's 22. If you want kiwi fruit, it's 18. If you want banana, it's 11 grams. So you do this once. I do this a lot with my recipes. I always do alternatives. But if you do it once, then you don't have to think about it. And the other thing that I like to do is cheat sheets. For example, now that Georgia can eat nuts, I've made cheat sheets. So if I'm out of sorts, like, okay, if I give Georgia 10 grams of macadamia nuts, I can give her this much fruit, and I put down the list of every fruit that she likes with exactly the grams that she needs. And I just have to read the cheat sheet, and then I have to pick the two things that I like, or what I've got in the house at the moment, and I just weigh them and I just give it to them.
So, I see. You're active you're an active advocate for rare diseases, for rare disease families, particularly education, particularly in education. What changes are you hoping to see?
Well, okay, I'll try to be brief this time, because otherwise we're gonna be here for the next 5 hours. So in New Zealand, the education system isn't designed to give support to every child with disabilities.
Mm-hmm.
It's only designed to give support to the worst 1.5% out of the 10% of disabled children that we have in this country. So it's already a flawed system, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the matrix that the government, the Ministry of Education uses to establish who is worthy of help, that is not designed for anything that's outside, the top 10 major disabilities. So if you have a child with Down syndrome, if you have a child who's severely on the autism spectrum, if you have a child with profound ADHD, if you have a child with Huntington's disease, or like all the main disabilities, in obviously air quotes, then you might stand a chance. A kid like Georgia, or any of us that are in the rare genetic conditions and rare disorders group, we don't stand a chance, because the criteria to evaluate whether our children or we need help are not designed for us. So what we have is kids that they still have, let me call them mainstream disabilities just for the sake of argument. It's not, there's no mainstream disability, but more common disabilities. They will still be left out, and children that could potentially be doing okay if they had just a little bit of help, they're getting left behind. And every single child with complex and rare disabilities falls through the cracks. And it's just not a good system. And I know that there is a very good fight that actually all teachers in the entire nation are fighting, because what they want is to actually have a teacher aide per class.
Mm-hmm.
So they have, the teacher that teaches the subjects and looks after every child. And then you have the teacher aide whose entire job for that hour is to help the kids that need additional help. Now, this is by all means, it's still not enough, because some kids need constant one-on-one help. If someone has got Down syndrome or a severe, they're severely on the autism spectrum, you can't just give them 5 minutes help here and there. However, that could be a good way. So, you have your bottom 1.5% of kids that actually do need constant one-on-one help for medical or cognitive reason. They still get their one-to-one teacher aid, but everyone else is not left behind either. And obviously, the challenge is that you need money for that.
Mm-hmm.
So it needs to be funded, and that's the battle.
Yeah. So that is another common one with rare diseases. It's there is a saying in the rare disease space that's by a doctor, is when you hear hoofbeats, think horses, zebras. So horses are common conditions, zebras are rare. So that's I didn't know that happened in the education system also. It's been a while since I've been there. But I started out as a teacher's aide. The schools here are way overcrowded to illegal limits.
Yeah, no, it's I mean, I know that it doesn't matter where you go with the it doesn't matter where you are in the world, there's like unique challenges. And the reality is the only countries that are probably not facing this sort of situation are the more welfare state countries, like the northern European countries, where smaller populations, you pay a significant amount of taxes, but everyone is very well looked after in every aspect of of social life, whether it's education or healthcare or transportation or housing, or it's a very complex conversation. But the reality is, so I've been following the Global Disability Summit that happened just a few months ago. And I found it really interesting, because what they did, they actually spoke the people with the purse strings language. And they were like, okay, if you don't care about anything else, if it doesn't touch you, you don't have anyone in your life with disabilities, and you might be thinking, I don't understand why I have to pay for these people. Even if you think about that, think about the fact that every child that you leave behind and you leave to slip through the cracks, they become adults, they cannot contribute to society. And to save what on average will be a 3% of GDP of your country, to not help these children become functioning adults that can at least contribute to society on a part-time basis, they're going to cost close to 13% in maintenance, because they are not fit to be part of society. So even if all you care about is budgets, it's still a good idea to help these bloody children and give them a best chance at life, so you don't have to worry about them when they're adults. And I found that very powerful, because it transcends, ideologies, politics. When you deal with something like this, like, look, I don't care what you think. I don't care what your beliefs are. I don't care about anything. What I care about is that my child has the same access to life, and the same access to a chance of a good quality of life as everyone else.
Yeah.
And that's the reality.
Yeah. But if you guys can get that to be a 1-on-1 ratio, that would be awesome. That's a
I don't think it's gonna, that's a big ask. I don't think it's like we're basically effectively we're asking to double the spending on teacher salaries.
wow.
If you think about it, it's a lot.
Mhm.
But even if we get even just someone part-time or like one teacher aide pinning, being dedicated to a small cluster of classes rather than I know, aim high, and then you can sort of
That almost
work your way
has to be a
through.
volunteer thing.
Yeah, but it would take care of everything, honestly. If they, if somehow people open their eyes and like, oh, actually, that might mean that they're gonna take another 2% out of my salary, but man, it will save us a lot of money down the line in health and work and income and benefit and blah blah blah. Then maybe it's worth considering, isn't it?
Yeah. So, let's see, what do you wish teachers and school administrators understood about kids with rare metabolic conditions like GLUT1?
They're complex and they're variable. So, and it's fine because, the teachers, I'm married to a teacher. Teachers get trained on teaching. They're not trained on taking care of disabilities. So I understand where they're coming from. But what I don't understand is sometimes they don't want to make an effort to try and wrap their head around the complexities of rare disorders. They expect, again, let's go back to I keep bringing up Down syndrome and autism just because they're two very distinctive and very well known disabilities. But a child with Down syndrome and a child with severe autism, they might have good or bad days,
Mm-hmm.
but their symptoms and their behaviors and their outcomes are quite stable across the board.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, for example, someone like we have a friend who has a child with the GLUT1 deficiency who's 12. Her condition is a little bit milder than Georgia. On a good day, she talks a little bit slowly and she might move a little bit slower than her peers, but you wouldn't tell that she's got a significant disabilities. But on a bad day, she might take my friend is saying some days we check in and she's she's taking her pajamas off to get ready to school, and 45 minutes later we find her on the floor half naked, cold, because maybe it's the middle of winter, because she just doesn't have the energy, and doing something as simple as putting a pants on might trigger a seizure.
Yeah.
And she still has to go to school. On
Yeah.
those days they have to make accommodations.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just hard for them to see, a kid that is fine on a Monday, that even maybe, just walks briskly through the classroom on a Monday and needs a wheelchair on Wednesday. It's hard. I understand that it's hard to wrap your head around that, but that's the reality of, anything that affects the metabolism will not have a day that's your typical metabolic disorder day. Some days will be great and some days will be shockingly bad, and they just have to they just have to get to terms with it. And also the other thing that I haven't experienced that myself because obviously Georgia's still little, but talking to parents with kids at especially high school age,
Mm-hmm.
even kids, teenagers that start off the day good, all of a sudden they hit a slump. They didn't have their normal amount of breakfast. They ate a little bit less, and they're halfway through the class and they run out of steam and they have a seizure, or they get lethargic, or and it might look like from the other side of the classroom, like, oh, look at that bloody lazy kid with their head on the on the table, not paying attention, but maybe they're having a crisis. And
Yeah.
so, there's kids that have to deal with the I don't know, rules in schools that maybe you're not allowed to snack in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
These kids wouldn't survive without snack because maybe they're having a bad day and they just need to pop, they just need to eat a couple of a few nuts to get some energy back up. And it's just there's such small adjustments, but they make such a huge difference. And it's just I be ready. We're past the days where the teacher is the authoritarian figure that you cannot speak to, and the children are not to be trusted. We're past that age. We're not living in those times anymore. If the kid is telling you that they've got a headache, that they're feeling lethargic, that they're feeling sleepy, or they're feeling funny, listen to them, But yeah, it's hard. It's very hard.
Yeah. So, addressing the audience here, I'm sorry if it seems like I'm ignoring you guys. I'm trying to pay attention to my guest here, and so, see, how do you balance being a caregiver with being an advocate?
Yeah, people are not going to like this, but the only way that I can fit everything through my day is to give up my personal time. That's it. I still need to work, and I still need to sleep, and I still need to eat. So what gives is my hobbies, and that's the truth.
Yeah. So what do you get any time for yourself?
Yeah, I still get some time for myself. Like, I have to really make an effort. Like, I try to go for a run a few times, 2-3 times a week. They can never be more than half an hour. And then sometimes I just, run back into the house, go straight in the kitchen without having the time to change or take my shoes off and make dinner and then tidy up. And then maybe actually, it's funny, my husband and I are in this like cycle where we complain that we don't get enough sleep because we go to sleep too late, because by the time we've worked, tidied up, cooked, cleaned, looked after Georgia, did the things that we need to do, it's 10 o'clock and technically it's bedtime, but we're like, no, I refuse to go to sleep now. I want to do something for myself. And then we stretch that late evening out. And then we wake up in the morning and we repeat the cycle. Oh, I'm tired. And then, yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah. So, is Georgia old enough to go out with you to do things?
Yep. Yeah. She loves going to the supermarket with us. That's like an adventure. And she likes having the responsibility of carrying some of the groceries in her hands, even though we have to basically put our hands on her shoulders so she can walk. But then she's useful, and she loves cooking with us, and we love going to the zoo.
Yeah. So it's kind of becomes a hobby when you have a special diet like this to go to the store.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
But I know I'm on a low protein diet, and I have a pretty low tolerance, high tolerance for what most people get, but for this condition. But with a low protein diet, some of the kids are down below 6 grams of protein a day. I've seen tolerances as low as 2 grams a day. And so it's not much. And so
correct.
It's really hard to find stuff in the store when you have a tolerance of less than 6 grams a day. And so it really becomes
yes. Yeah. And I think unless you live it,
you don't understand it. Right.
Yeah. There's no way.
So, have you connected with other GLUT1 families globally? What's the most powerful thing that's come from those connections?
So the first thing is I found the GLUT1 Foundation quite soon. And that was step one. And then what I found was that it was great, but the GLUT1 Foundation is US based. And I found myself pretty lonely because we don't get, like, New Zealand doesn't get the same amount of stuff. Like, we are a tiny place at the end of Earth, and we don't have the same variety in terms of groceries and products that you guys have in the US. So I found myself getting quite frustrated because I couldn't get access to the same thing. So the metabolic team here in New Zealand was actually really good, and they put a few parents in touch. Like they got us in touch with one another. That we have a small group on an app, a messaging app called Signal, and we have a group chat of all GLUT1 parents, and it's a lot more. It's a lot more relatable because half of this condition is the diet, and the diet is the food, and if you can't access the same food, then you can't have the same conversation. So it was very important for us to actually find each other. So every time that hey, there's this new website that stocks keto products that is bringing in these new spreads or these new cookies, and so one of us will try it and review it, and like, oh no, Georgia hated it, or like, oh, this is really good, and blah blah blah.
So I have noticed Pembroke, who is mostly low protein, they have started selling some keto items.
There's not a lot out there. Like if I had to give you a list of the things that I can walk in, buy, and get out and hand over to Georgia, it will be less than 5.
Yeah, most of the keto items that
Too high in protein.
Cambrick's medical food, and so that would be stuff that probably she can have because it's medically prescribed.
Yeah, correct.
Nutrition has left the United States, and they no longer sell things here. We have it outdated by like a long time. But
yeah. Yeah, no, it's hard. I mean, my husband is always joking about, oh, thank God that we have Hollywood fads with all these celebrities going on a keto diet, because then the products become popular. And I'm like, yeah, no, that's fair enough. But still, some of them are unusable because they're actually just fads, and so they're not actually helpful when you're doing an actual diet. But hey, it is what it is. Again, I say it is what it is a lot.
Yeah, it's yes and no. That can be good, cannot be, but because sometimes in some ways it makes the prices go up.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the other thing. Definitely the other thing.
Yeah. In the U.S., there were still fighting for the Medical Nutrition Equity Act, which would help families afford medical diets like Georgia's. What would access to like that mean for families everywhere?
I have to admit that I'm not too familiar with the American the bill that you're referring to. I tried to look it up, but I have to apologize. I didn't have enough time.
Oh, it's okay.
But
so nutritionequity.org is where you find that, and it is would cover medical foods, medical formula, and vitamins nationwide. And so that is right now it varies state to state. I'm lucky to live in one of the states that does cover the medical foods and formula.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the reality is it's hard, right? If we had another type of condition that wasn't metabolic based, we would get a pill and a drug, and that would be it. But for us, it's many tens of dollars a week that we have to dish out of our own pockets, and everyone's diet is slightly different, so we have slightly different needs, and it's just how do you at least having something as basic as formula would be the bare minimum, really.
Yeah. Do you think diet-based treatment should be treated with some urgency with the same urgency medications?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the reality is, just because my child is eating some nuts and some avocado and some cheese, it doesn't mean that that's not what she medically needs.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just because it comes in form of food instead of being a pill that you swallow or a injection that you do to your body, it doesn't mean that it's got the same effect, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, I think it's not necessarily stigma, but I think people don't take it as seriously because, like, oh, you're just on a special diet, thinking, but it's the same challenge that, for example, without having to talk about disabilities, it's the same challenge that celiacs have.
Mm-hmm.
With the difference that if a celiac has gluten, they get gassy and they have diarrhea and they feel very uncomfortable for a couple of days and then they're fine. Where my child, if she eats carbs, she can have a seizure. And if a seizure is a grand mal seizure, which is it's the worst type of seizure, and it lasts more than 5 minutes, she can have permanent brain damage. So,
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
True. I've been there myself. I've actually had 2 seizures. I mean 2 strokes. Seizures actually caused my strokes.
Yeah, that's not fun.
No. The last one almost paralyzed my left side. Lucky to get it back. What has Georgia taught you about strength perspective about strength and perspective that you can carry into your advocacy work?
Okay, this is going to sound weird, but she taught me not to care. If I need to speak up to change something, I cannot wait for people to come to their own conclusions, and I cannot hope for the acts from the goodness of the heart. I need to speak up, and I need to be clear, and I need to be direct, and I need to not leave room for any misunderstanding or ambiguity if I want to get the right outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that I think, especially as women, we don't know how to do very well. For whatever reason, that's pretty clear, but there's nothing more powerful, especially as a woman, there's nothing more powerful than finding the freedom to just speak your mind because it's the right thing to do for your child.
Mm-hmm. If you could share one piece of advice with a parent just receiving a GLUT1 diagnosis, what would it be?
Don't panic.
Mm-hmm.
Just keep calm and start easy. Don't try to get it all done at once. It's easy to get overwhelmed. So I know it's hard, but take a step back and focus on the very, very small things.
Mm-hmm.
And the rest will come.
Right. How can our listeners, wherever they are, support families like yours?
Well, the GLUT1 Foundation, if you type in on Google GLUT1Foundation.org, we run fundraisers every year. And the fundraising, only a small amount goes to programs for the families. Actually, most of the fundraising goes towards research. So, and it's not just research for that particular metabolic condition. It's a rare genetic disorders research. So it's paramount. It's very important money.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Serena, for joining us today and sharing Georgia's story. Her family's journey with GLUT1 deficiency and all the incredible advocacy work that she's doing in New Zealand. And
thank you for having me.
Sure. If you're watching this live or catching the replay, please remember this episode is for informational and for informational purposes only, and should not be considered as medical advice. Always consult a qualified healthcare professional before making any medical decisions. We ask everyone to continue keeping the comments kind, respectful, and nice, and free from political debate. This space is for learning and connection. If you found this conversation helpful, please subscribe to my to Rare Connection wherever you get your podcasts, and don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, Rare Chef, where this episode and many others are available in video format. You can follow Rare Connection on Facebook, LinkedIn, Facebook, LinkedIn, and X. If you want to support the show, check out the links in the description. Every bit helps us keep amplifying rare voices around the world. I'm Joanna, and I want to thank you for being part of our second year anniversary journey. Here's to continuing to connect, educate, and advocate together. See you next time. Thanks.
Thank you.